All right, I've been asked to review a bunch of different e-bikes on the channel throughout the years, and I finally caved on this particular model and brand. This is the HOVSCO HOVGtrs. Objectively, this might raise an eyebrow because this is a fitness-based channel, and this is not the best bike to use for physical fitness because, as you can see, it is a moped-based style. I will get into why specifically I did go ahead and choose this e-bike. I will give you guys the pros, cons, features, what separates this bike apart, and at the end of the day, do I think this bike is worth the overall investment? By the end, this bike and this style may or may not be for you, but if it is, I do have a discount code and affiliate link down below. Help support me in the channel if you guys are all interested. I'll get into why I chose this brand and this model specifically and where it stands out, but first off, why I chose this model and why I thought a moped style might be right for me. First thing is in its versatility. Now, I already said, and I'll say this many times, this is not the best choice of an e-bike if you're looking to use this as a supplement to physical fitness or to get your cardio in. There's much better options, and of course a traditional bike is definitely great. And I can already know there's probably a lot of you guys out there who are anti-e-bikes. I think they're a fun and interesting tool, and that's what I'm going to kind of go with first, is just the F word, the fun word. You're going to see a lot of driving footage throughout this video of just me taking in some local trails and sites and just some beautiful areas here. And so that's where I kind of like to kind of use these types of machinery. And so for me, these electronic modes of transportation are just kind of a fun way to get out there, enjoy nature without necessarily getting in a workout. And oftentimes you guys have seen this throughout the years, especially in the summertime. I like to get some outdoor workouts in. And so what I wanted to do something with this bike was not necessarily treat it as a full-on workout to commute to those parks. So this thing really is a commuter-based bike if you guys want to look at it that way. You can go to your local store, or the other thing you guys could also do is say go to the park, your local park, throw on some resistance bands, a resistance board, and you guys could actually do your workout that way. So right away when I got this thing, the very first thing I did was start ripping it across on the grass on an open field. Right away I thought this feels like a motorbike. I went off-road on the trails. I wouldn't always recommend it, but this thing can definitely handle essentially any off-road trail you guys could throw at it. Of course, you got to be careful with your own risk. Gravel trails, I was on sandy terrain, and everything so far this thing handled like a champ, and I'll get to all the speed and how it kind of rode here in a second. But I just like to be able to kind of go on multi-terrain if I want to. You of course have to check with your local laws and ordinances and stuff like that, and I'll maybe say this multiple times, but this is a class 2 bike. I think there's class 2 and class 3 bikes. I think it depends on the speed settings that you can do. This does have an app that you can go in here and actually change this bike from a class 2 to class 3 bike, which different rules may or may not apply. But the class 2 option caps this thing off at roughly 20 miles per hour, but in the class 3 option, this thing is up there and goes up to like 29 miles per hour, which I found myself really not wanting to go beyond 25, to be honest. Now, why to get specifically on why I chose this bike, I'll first rattle off some of the specs and then also compare it to, say, more budget-friendly e-bikes around the internet, because those are some of the things I considered a couple years ago as well. This has a 750 watt brushless geared hub motor, which I'll get this later, has a 1500 watt peak, delivering up to 90 Newton meters of torque. You can definitely feel this with the strong acceleration, especially on the hills. The website, or some of the things I was reading, says this has a max speed of 32 miles per hour. I found, at least for realistic tests, me it being 200 pounds, 205, 210, give or take, roughly I'm getting up to like 28 miles per hour, but that's on a totally flat surface, and it takes a little bit of time to get up to, once you're say 25, to get to 28 miles per hour. It has a 48 volt lithium battery where it says you can offer up to 65 miles per pedal assist charge on a flatter terrain. Not a huge bike guy, but I do know Shimano gear shifters are pretty good. It has a Shimano 7-speed shift system. It has a full suspension setup, so it's got a front fork plus adjustable 4-bar rear linkage, and it comes fitted with these 20 by 4 inch fat tires. Now this thing can handle a pretty heavy load, go up to 450 pounds with the rider plus the cargo. I've seen people buy me, I don't know if it's really recommended for it, so check and, you know, your own risk and all this stuff. But pretty long seat that if you wanted to, depending how long you're really going, might not be the most comfortable thing in the world, but I've seen people buy me that have like 2 or 3, even 3 people deep. Probably wouldn't do that. I know this company, I did see on their website, they do have some sort of a travel seat type setup for kids as well. I don't want to say it's light, but I wouldn't say it's super heavy either. I guess it's kind of relative, but they say this thing is 72 to 75 pounds. I'll get into more specifics on what separates this battery apart from maybe the cheaper ones that are out there, but this thing has a charge time of about 4 to 5 hours is what it said. I noticed when I drive this, when I put a decent amount of miles in it, say in like one session, I'm not going to go more than like probably 20 miles, you know, round trip to and from a place. Battery drain really is not that substantial of anything, so I'm always checking the app. It gives you a percentage on how much is there. I find it'll be full charge and it kind of hangs out around like the halfway charge mark. But to go ahead and remove the battery, gives you a little key. You unlock it, you lift up, it pops off, and that's how you'd go charge it right there on the little outlet right there. Like I said, it takes about 4 to 5 hours if you're at a low charge to fully charge it. And then it just kind of sits right there, lock it back up. Unless you're doing a lot of heavy research, it's kind of hard to tell with many of these brands and kind of odd names such as this one called HOVSCO, as far as if it's a fly-by-night brand, if it's just a white label company or whatever. I actually took a tip from another previous video. I'll try and find it and flash it here on the screen or link it down below, on this woman who does a lot of e-bike reviews, and she was talking about the top 10 companies she would actually trust. And that is because there are so many kind of fly-by-night companies, and I'll get into cost and budget while the cheapest option isn't always the best. Point is, she did go ahead and recommend HOVSCO in that top 10 list as being a quality company that seems to be growing. And then the other huge thing for me, which put them over the map compared to other brands that are out there, is that they actually have physical locations and storefronts throughout the United States. And they actually have one near me. If I get time or get a chance before this video, I might go ahead and actually get a shot of that. So if you're kind of on the fence and actually want to try this for yourself, you actually can go on location and go ahead and do that and test ride it. Unless you're looking at specific specs and features and physical characteristics of the bike, the next thing you're probably considering is budget, and should you just maybe go with something cheaper on Amazon. A lot of great inexpensive, cheap products on Amazon. I've covered many of them, and I'll go ahead and, if you want me to review a specific e-bike on Amazon, let me know and I'll be happy to look into it. But here are some of the things I found that separates this apart, or even other e-bikes of quality brands compared to those on Amazon. Now, just like resistance training equipment, it's just the build quality itself. So this HOVSCO kind of boasts itself as having a thicker frame welds. Also has internal cabling and full aluminum construction. They also say to try and go out of the way to get fewer plastic components. The biggest thing this has going for it is the power, and this thing does boast that it has more power compared to the competition. So after a little bit of research, some of these cheap bikes advertise 750 watts or brushless motors, but they might peak over 900 to 1000 watts. HOVGtrs, they're saying it hits at a true 1500 watt peak with up to 90 Newton meters of torque. And I will tell you, you definitely can feel that, especially if you go to like level 5 on this setting and you throttle it, you're gonna feel that. Most people know this, but most of us are kind of ignorant. I would say I'm definitely ignorant to the idea of like what's actually in the battery. They say they use Samsung LG cells in its battery, so depending on the batch you're getting. So compared to say generic or just unbranded cells in say most budget bikes. So this just means you have a higher, longer cycle of the battery and maybe a less capacity of drop off over the period of time of the battery. So getting into how this thing works and how this thing feels, not the smartest place to record a video on the edge of the water, especially with an electronic bike, but I thought that might add to the suspense here and also the beautiful view. But how this works is pretty simplistic. I didn't read any manual, I just kind of jumped on it and started pedaling, which I would say is a strong suit. These things are pretty much idiot proof for the most part, especially if you're familiar with a regular bike. It has an on off switch. You just hold the button down, the unit turns on, and you can see the miles per hour. You can see the level of kind of pedal assist that you want to do. Now this one does have, I'm making sure it's off now, does have a full throttle. So this is the throttle button right here, and you could just set it right away out of the gate. Just tap it for pedal assist 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 is the max. The higher the pedal assist, if you're just going throttle only, you'll feel a much higher torque, and the top speed is just kind of capered off. So at pedal assist 1, I want to say you're getting like maybe 5 to 8 miles per hour, and then it progressively kind of goes up. When you get to pedal assist 5, you're going to feel a big torque, so much so that if you're not ready for it, this top wheel will come up off the ground. But pedal assist 5, you can get up to, like I said, 25 to maybe 28 miles per hour realistically. And then if it is at pedal assist 0, you can essentially treat this like a normal bike and just use the Shimano shifters, which do work really well. There is also a headlight button that holds an LED light that goes on in the front. You also have a light in the back that will also turn on when you do that. And if the light is off and you hit the brakes, there will be this kind of pulsing red light that also is there as well. How I've been using this has been somewhat fluctuating a little bit, because sometimes I will take these things out for rides with my kids, and obviously I can go super fast and I can zip up and down kind of ahead of them or come behind them or whatever. I'm using kind of both modes. If it's actually in pedal assist 0, so just using pedal only, this thing still is actually a very functional bike and it works really well with all the 7 speeds. The one downside I say is it should be maybe obvious, it's not comfortable and maybe meant for long distance rides. You can see how I'm sitting here, you cannot adjust the seat. The seat is very comfortable, but it looks a little goofy. Say if I start pedaling at this high point, you can see where my legs are. It works, and I'd say it works fairly well, kind of like a BMX bike back in the day, but even that you could raise the seat up. The only downside I notice, if I'm on here for long periods of time and I am doing some pedal motion, you'll start to feel that friction or just, some uncomfortable, chafing, so to speak, right here as I'm pedaling with my thighs kind of hitting the inside of this seat. But I'd say for the most part, this seat is actually a benefit versus a negative. But you are kind of knowing what you're getting here with this design, which, like I said at the start, really feels like a crossover or hybrid between a bike and a motorcycle. Now, going along with that with some of the cons, I didn't get into that. It does come in one box. You got to fully assemble it yourself unless you went to one of the dealerships and got this kind of installed for you. Not the biggest thing in the world. There were some cumbersome parts that you're going to want two people to assemble it. The only thing I started to notice when I first had it out of the box is there was this really annoying kind of like creaking noise, almost like you're on an old tour bus or tour van driving through something, or an old taxi cab. You guys remember that? And there's this kind of like creakiness going on. Now, the frame boasts itself as having high welds, solid aluminum. And what I did notice is after tightening a few things, messing with things, and also just time in general, that creakiness basically went away. There's a little bit of disc noise in the brakes. The brakes are very responsive, but there was some subtle adjustments I had to do with the Allen wrench to kind of make some of the noise in the brakes go away. Otherwise, I'd say the only con in this bike is if you started to really enjoy the feel and function of these e-bikes and the pedal assist, if you're kind of new to it, kind of like myself, and you're on this moped design, you're thinking maybe you're regretful, like, man, I should have got like a basic bike so I can go longer distances. That might be you, and I could see some people having buyer's remorse. But for me, the trade-off of just feeling like I'm on a motorcycle and I can kind of lazily pedal when I want to. I got the versatility in the tires. I'm treating this thing like an off-road bike and kind of a fun vehicle. And like I said, this is primarily just being used for fun, enjoyment, maybe going to a local park so I can do some exercises out there. I'm not using it for cardio. I think it checks all the boxes of what I want, and I kind of like this seat. It's honestly kind of comfortable. You feel like you're just kind of sitting on cruise when you're kind of driving this thing, or you're kind of ripping into it with the throttle mode. Overall, as my first foray into the e-bike world here, I don't know how many of these I'll actually be doing. If you guys want to see more, let me know. I'm loving this HOVSCO. I had to look at the name again, GTRS. I think it is a very fun vehicle. I got nothing bad to say about it now. As always, any of my videos and reviews, if something dramatically happens, something breaks or malfunctions or I have major issues with it, I will pin a comment on this video if you guys want to come back to it and check it out for yourselves.